I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind to Goku again, but you literally made everyone a kid, like everyone.
Yeah.
I will say this: no one asked for GT 2.0.
That is fair. And here's a point that I made earlier.
And I'll tell you this, Phil. You can't defend the show, especially when Naveed and I've been watching it since we were 4 years old, 5 years old.
Well,
we've been 25 years invested into this.
Have you been watching the original Dragon Ball since you're 5 years old?
I watched all of it. I've watched every single Dragon Ball. I've played every single game. I've read every spin-off manga. Naveed and I are invested. I have invested.
I haven't watched it as long, but I've seen Dragon Ball, I've seen Dragon Ball Z, and I've seen Dragon Ball Super, and I liked them all for different reasons.
Did you watch GT?
I didn't watch GT.
Then watch GT first, and then explain to us how you feel after that.
So I got you. But here's my point about this new show, Dragon Ball Daima. Like, yes, they're all kids. Does that immediately mean that the story is going to be terrible? No, in my opinion, because most of the great arcs in Dragon Ball Z were about a kid, Gohan, or like a young adult, because did you know Trunks.
But did you know Akira Toriyama wanted to get the show away from Goku and go to Gohan?
Yeah, I understand that.
And it did not do very well, so then he went back to Goku.
Yeah, Goku has always been like the central character that other characters have grown from their interactions with Goku.
And Akira Toriyama hates Vegeta as a character. He wishes he can just kill him off, but he can't do it.
So
he hates Vegeta.
Yeah.
I agree with him there. I'm kidding.
When Daima comes out, one thing for sure. It's going to be different. It's going to be original. Look at what's happening right now with like Dragon Ball Battle of the Gods. That was a movie, and then it was in the anime, and now they're putting out another version of the movie. Isn't it better to have like some fresh original content from the main creator of Dragon Ball than these production companies rehashing the same thing over and over and over again? And so Dragon Ball Daima could be exactly like that. You won't know until you watch it.
The problem with Dino is you have Bobbity back, and people are like, but he died.
Well, everyone has died in Dragon Ball. That's like, you can bring them back. You know?
But Bobbity, no one liked Bobbity. It's like, it's like really, it's like Emperor Pilaf. It's like you brought Pilaf back again. Everyone's like, can these guys just go away? That's like Naveed. Naveed's tired of Pilaf.
Oh man.
Yeah. But that's
doesn't canon, is it? Let's go like Junior. Never mind. Sorry.
Yeah.
And then it was supposed to end after the Cell Saga, but then Akira Toriyama added more chapters for Buu. So they were gonna make Z no matter what. It's just the Buu Saga was iffy, but Akira Toriyama made it, and then
I get that.
Yeah.
But like, there's a clear distinction from when you go from Dragon Ball to Z. And the distinction is it's getting more serious, it's getting more focused on fighting and power levels. Mm-hmm. Dragon Ball was a comedy. It was a comedy adventure. It was based on like this ancient Chinese story of like the Monkey King.
Early episodes were, but then they got steadily more serious as like.
But they were still always an adventure show with like a lot of gags. Way more gags and adventure than Dragon Ball Z. Dragon Ball Z is like, let's travel to the land to fight this guy. But Dragon Ball's this original series is like a winding adventure, encountering many new friends and heroes and enemies. But no, Dragon Ball Z, it's like, boom, this evil guy showed up on Earth and it's time to fight him. Like that's a very different story already,
Yeah, and that's what I loved about it is the fact that Dragon Ball has its own thing and Z had its own thing, and it fit perfectly. Right. It fit perfectly, but like it's sort of hard for me at least for them to go back to Dragon Ball. Like I get Super was perfect because they mixed it up, but then it's like going to puberty, right? Like you do things as a kid that you don't do when you're an adult. When you're an adult. But imagine going back into being a kid again. Like it's like you're not gonna be. It's not gonna be the same because you're older now, and it's like it's not the same. So they're probably appealing to more kids.
Can you watch the original Dragon Ball and still enjoy it, or
definitely.
You only want to watch Dragon Ball Z? That's my question.
Okay, I prefer Z, but I watch Dragon Ball all the time. But I don't want them. The thing I'm upset is they're going back to something like that they don't need to go back to. They could just keep it with Super. Super did, as much as I hate it, they meshed everything perfectly, and I feel like now they're just going to the Dragon Ball era, which I don't know why they're doing that, but I prefer the mixing.
It could be.
Here's a question for you.
Because if you watch the fan review, Every fan was upset. You didn't hear anyone cheer. Everyone was like, "What is this?"
Well, that's not true. I watched the official trailer, and like most of the comments I saw were
no. Did you watch the
middle
live
of
reaction?
the road, where like it's different. I want to check it out.
Did you watch the live reaction? Like people, like at Comic or at New York, whatever thing, they're like in the crowd, like they're like mumbling, like, "What is this? Like, we don't want this."
Well, because it's probably not what they were expecting.
Yeah,
right?
no one was expecting this, and then when there was leaks of it being coming out, people were like, "Please don't let this be true."
Well, I get you. I really do.
Well,
I think
the way I look at it is that Dragon Ball GT had some good ideas like Super Saiyan 4 and stuff like that, but I think it wasn't executed properly. And Toriyama, I think this is his way of liking the idea where they go to different planets and doing these little adventures. Kind of like, doing these adventures kind of like how in the old show. Because, look at the whole Broly thing. We had technically 3 Broly movies in the Dragon. I know they're not DBZ canon, but there was 3, Broly movies, and he liked that character so much. Then there was like this movie made, and people loved it. And with the animation, the animation was so good, but but they rehashed that. I mean, they brought back an old character. So then when I'm looking at this whole kid saga, it's like I think that's not to say that like I've watched the trailer and I'm okay with it. But I think it's kind of like that. I think it's kind of like Toriyama trying to take a stab at this old idea that wasn't executed right. Because the only thing that, if I remember correctly, Toriyama really only pinned, like he done the character designs. So
yep, he only did the character designs.
Yeah, so the designs, all that you could thank Toriyama for. But as far as the story, if anyone hates it or whatever, how it played out, I mean, he's not the guy.
Usually in like, if you take a step back in media, when there's a long-running series, at first, if the creator shakes things up, everyone gets upset, everyone gets worried about the future of the series. And then later on, they kind of look back and they say, most of the time, well, that was good, that helped the series move forward. So you could look at it for different video games, different series. As long as it's the original creator making a twist or a change, it usually works out pretty well. When it doesn't work out well, is when someone that had nothing to do with the series at all buys it and then changes it radically, then it doesn't work out well. But you're talking about the creator of Dragon Ball changing up his creation, which he's done throughout the history of the creation. So I don't think it's going to be a bad series. I think it's going to be different. I think it's going to be not what people expected. But I think if you go in with an open mind, you're going to see it's going to be a lot of fun, like Dragon Ball was.
It's going to depend on the fan base, because this happened with the original Gundam series. Because Gundam is different series. It's not.
Char, not Char. Damn it. What's
Char and Amuro.
People didn't like the main series?
No. So the creator of the original Gundam, because there's different spin-offs.
Well, I'm talking about the main line, the UC timeline.
Yes. He created a new series called Gundam Age, and Gundam. It was so bad it flopped. I mean, like as a Gundam enthusiast, I couldn't finish it because it was so bad. And the studio says, "We know this is your creation, but you're no longer able to write your own show." And because the fans were so mad, as in like it's like George Lucas.
So bad.
Just the whole story, the animation. The characters, I mean, like it was Gundam, but it was like basically like almost like GT. It was like a retelling. It's like no fan wanted a retelling. We wanted a continuation, and he was given 3 tries by the studio because he's the creator of the show, but he doesn't have the funding. So he created 3 different shows. They gave him 3 tries, and all 3 shows flopped. And they basically say, "Hey, you are the founder of the series. We love you, but you're no longer allowed to lead projects anymore." So the creator of Gundam is no longer able to make his own shows.
Dang.
Because he messed up 3 times, and he was given 150 episodes, 50 episodes for one series, 50 for another, and 50 for a third. And I watched all 3 of them, and I can say they're the worst in the series. And this is the creator of Gundam, like the guy that made it what it is. The original series he made was fantastic. The other ones were great. Then he just stopped doing it because he just took a break, and he's like, "All right, I want to retell my story. Let me retell you my story, everyone." And everyone's like, "We hate it. We hate it even more. Stop! You're killing your own show. Stop it." So I hope Akira Toriyama doesn't do the same.
Well, I think the difference between Gundam to a certain extent than like Dragon Ball is that Dragon Ball's been the same storyline for 40 years practically.
Yeah.
God dang. Okay, so I'm just gonna
50 years.
Yeah, Gundam's a long time too because that started in like 77, I think, right?
79.
Dang it. Anyways, it started a long time ago in 79, and the UC timeline, that's called the Universal Saga or something, Universal Century. Yeah, and that one was tight. Like they had this whole 2-year war, and then some of the other stuff set after it was like, the Earth Federation won, but then a lot of the stuff after was kind of like post-war, where there's still a lot of like ill will between the space colonies and the Earth people. And it was awesome. It was cool, and it was still pretty tight, pretty neat. But then they went crazy with all the different iterations. It's like they had like this Gundam fighting thing that was like Gundam Tekken. That's just the best way I can explain. It's like no, actually, sorry,
G Gundam. It was G Gundam.
Golden Finger, but it was kind of like Dragon Ball Z if you put people with mecha.
That was the best series of all. Nobody liked it.
I liked it. Then they had like Gundam Seed, and then they had some
Gundam Seed was the retelling of the Universal Century, but in modern.
Yeah, and then they had a couple of other different ones. Like one that was like a post-apocalyptic Earth Gundam. Then they had another one
Gundam X.
Maybe that was it. Yeah, I only know briefly because I've been only focusing on the UC timeline right now. But then they had one where they had like little toys.
That one's actually a fun one. You know what's funny? It actually kind of reminds me of the new Dragon Ball coming out because everyone's like, "What is this?" And it actually did really well. The Build Fighter series.
Yeah. You can be surprised. You can be
I actually like the Build Fighter series.
And then surprised when you actually watch it.
I was actually really surprised too. So maybe Phil's onto something, but I'm just saying.
Apprehension.
When you have the manga in a good space right now, and everyone wants to see it so bad live, it hurts when you don't do it.
Well, I think too, it's like the potential of a series. It's like, I think, because I know we were talking about this before. When it comes to TV series or video games, it's like when it takes a left turn or something. It's like the potential of the series. You know that there's so much to explore. It was kind of like Resistance: Fall of Man. Like I love that game.
Oh man.
First and second one, like the second one, I had a little bit of apprehension because of how they handle some things, but
they same here.
Some cool ideas because the Chimera have been on Earth before, and there was some alien race that wiped them out before, and it was this other alien race, and that
wasn't the Cloven.
Yeah, and then nothing happened with the Cloven, and that was
they never talked about it.
And it was so interesting because it was like this subgroup that got infected with the Chimera virus, but they never fully turned. And they were hostile to both sides, and they were especially hostile to the Chimera, but they were doing their own thing. So it was like this, I guess, this third faction that was like just doing their own thing, like just unbothered by the whole war, while the humans are barely surviving, but the Cloven are just chilling, just taking what they want. Like it's just like, oh yeah, you guys are having a war. We're cool with that. But it's just, but then kind of going back to Dragon Ball, it's just like it just sucks when you see, I guess. For me, seeing them turning into kids again, I won't lie. When I first saw that, I'm just like, okay, what's the gimmick now? Like, it's just kind of, maybe it's because I'm so used to it, or like kind of the stuff they do, kind of like the Tournament of Power, where freaking Master Roshi got to the level of fighting these guys who are all maybe above Frieza level when we've never seen him train, and the only thing I'm talking about anime only right now. The only thing that we have is that Goku, like, he gets possessed somehow by some lady, and basically Goku's like kind of spars with him just a little bit. He's like, "Oh my god, Master Roshi's been doing all this hidden training." I'm like, it's like, really? I'm just like sitting there like, really? Like, this is the best we got? Like, he's doing this hidden training.
So one of the great points I saw, like, from another comment on the release trailer for Daima was like, this will really help with the pacing of Dragon Ball, because pretty much from Z, the pacing of Dragon Ball has been, okay, we're gonna fight the strongest person in our area, and now the strongest person in the world, and now the strongest person in the solar system, and now the strongest person in the universe. And it's like, where do you go from there ultimately? Like, it's a pretty tiring and kind of like boring way to raise the stakes, is just say like, now there's someone stronger in the multiverse, and now there's someone stronger in all of history. But what they're doing with Daima is I think what they're doing is they're resetting the character's power level so that it's now actually dangerous and actually risky to fight other people. And that could be really refreshing, to see them have battles where stuff is actually on the line. because you've pretty much known since like the Frieza arc that like, wow, Goku's now the strongest and he's going to find someone stronger, and now it's going to be just expected that he'll win. But I think they could go a lot of different directions by resetting their power levels completely.
I think the only problem with that though is that they've always had the potential to having like dangerous situations that are not necessarily like I can blow up more planets than you. Like the best example I can ever think of, and it goes straight to Dragon Ball. There was this one character, and I think it was the Fortune Baba saga, and it's where Goku faces this one guy as like this devil man guy. He looks like a bat, wings or something like that. He has this ray power where basically if he zaps someone with it, if they have any evil in their hearts, they'll blow up. And that was like something that's like that wasn't a power scale issue. That wasn't like no matter what, apparently, because Goku was supposed to be super strong, but he got zapped with it and nothing happened to him. But that was just something where that character had this magical power that made him extremely dangerous. And kind of like there's another one. That's a character that could pretty much probably beat everyone in the probably not Beerus, but anyone up who just had evil in their hearts, like Frieza, not Broly, because Broly was good technically. But then it's like it goes back to then another one. There's this carrot guy, it's this rabbit, and if he touched you, you turned into a carrot. And I get it's a gag character in a sense, but it's like if he can touch someone and they turn into a carrot, that's a pretty nasty power. Like it's kind of like One Punch Man, where supposedly his power is like no matter he can kill anything with one punch. It's like those are like I get they're kind of gimmicky, kind of like powers, but still kind of like a power in and of itself. Because I mean, saying downplaying Cell or Boo or even Moro towards the end. You had all these characters that can regenerate their bodies, and they didn't seem to have any kind of like, I guess, drawback to that. Even when their whole body gets blown apart, they're just like, nah, I'm good. Like they just reform just as normal.
Right. Well, in Dragon Ball, the original series, there were so many unique traits like that. In Dragon Ball Z, there really weren't that many unique traits. It was usually like they're just super strong, or they're invincible, or they can absorb you and steal your powers. So
honestly,
nothing unique, right?
Yeah, I disagree with that. Like
Ginyu Squad, though, they had two characters that had unique powers. So Captain Ginyu could switch bodies, and then that Gui, what was his name? The little guy who could freeze time.
Guldo.
G. Yeah. And he could freeze time, and then Ginyu. Oh yeah, I guess both of them have G names. But yeah, Ginyu could switch bodies, and Guldo can stop time.
Yeah, like there were some, right? But if you were to look at like all of the enemies that the Z fighters fought, and you were to take percentages, like most of the percent of those fighters, those enemies would be pretty much like just super strong or invincible for those encounters. But if you look at Super and the original Dragon Ball, like every fighter has some unique power almost for the most part. Like there's a lot of variety. And I think that's something that makes it interesting, is that you have different people and they have to change their fighting tactic to fight those people. But Dragon Ball Z, like there was not really like let's look at Frieza, Cell, Boo. Like what were the things that killed them? Pretty much just some form of an energy attack, right? Like so it's kind of more boring, honestly, to see that type of fight compared to like you have to figure out how to deal with this time freezing ability, or avoid their poison jab, or like do some unique fighting maneuver that you're not used to. I feel like that's pushing the characters forward more than just do a stronger Kamehameha.
I disagree with that. I thought Dragon Ball for me was more. I watched all of Dragon Ball, but I don't think Dragon Ball is just too much kid friendly. If you're the type of person that loves like adventure, kid friendly stuff, then maybe Dragon Ball. But Z was so much more intense. The transformations, the artwork, I think Z just blows Dragon Ball and Super out of the park. Like it's like the first show that came to the United States was Z. And Z was more popular, and Z is the reason why Dragon Ball came to the United States too, because Z was so popular with the kids that they brought Dragon Ball over too, and then GT. So without Z being
over here first, though.
No, it didn't. No. The Ocean Dub brought Z over. So Z was a part of Savin, and Savin Ocean Dub.
Dub too, though.
Well, no, it was dubbed after Dragon Ball Z was successful. So Dragon Ball Z came first, right? It was dubbed by Ocean Dub, and it was part of Seven, the same people that made Power Rangers, right? They brought Z over, and then because Z was so popular, they end up bringing. They're eventually going to bring Dragon Ball over too. Then they brought Dragon Ball. The Dragon Ball actually aired in the U.S. later than Dragon Ball Z, and then after that, GT was aired. But in Japan, yeah, Dragon Ball was first, and then Z was second. But I just think Z is just way better in my opinion because it's more intense. It's more like for adults. Like I just like Dragon Ball is more. If you're like the adventure type thing, then it's cool. But it lacks that seriousness, which I enjoyed with Z and with Super. That's why Z will always be for me my favorite. I prefer it. You know, I still like Super, and I do like Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball is good too, but I think like the flagship show when people talk about Dragon Ball, like the flagship show has always been Z. It's always been Z. Like no one says Dragon Ball. They say Dragon Ball Z. In my opinion, like Z is everyone remembers. It's more iconic. Yeah.
But here's the question with that.
Goku with the little red pole.
Yeah, the Super Saiyan. I mean, that's like the best transformation in all of anime. That Super Saiyan transformation is probably the best transformation of any anime show. I think. Like imagine Goku turning Super Saiyan.
Here's the question with that. Can you keep the same trajectory of Z for 40 years? Doesn't that get a little bit boring? Like
I agree. It does, and that's why I think I was glad when they ended it. I wanted them to actually end it after the Cell saga, which is what Akira Toriyama wanted. He did not want any more Dragon Ball after Cell. Fans wanted more Dragon Ball Z, which is why he added the Buu. But I think they should have like put the nail in the coffin and after the Gohan killed Cell. That would have been perfect. I think that would have put the nail in the coffin. You would have Dragon Ball and then you have that Z era. And then everything else now, like it's just doesn't feel the same. Like, I like the Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball ending, But Super did a good job of combining the both, as much as I didn't enjoy it as much, but it had a good combination. But I think I don't. For me, I personally wouldn't want it. Just my preference. I wouldn't want them to go back to the Dragon Ball type scenario. I enjoyed. I watched Dragon Ball. I thought it was good, but I just don't want to go back into that. It's just for me, I didn't enjoy it. I prefer Z, man. Like Z to me is I don't watch anime, but I love Z, man. Like I'm a huge Z fan.
I love Z too, and I think the issue with Super was that it didn't know what it was wanting to do, and it's kind of hard when you have these characters that you have the Super Saiyan God and all this other stuff that's going down. You got to have villains that somehow or characters that can oppose them that are doing this like Super Saiyan God power, and that's what kind of makes it kind of feel weird too. Like when you have people like Jiren and these other characters who are not some of them are trained by the gods, but some of them are not, and yet they're contending with these people that have like supposedly this god chi stuff, and I think that kind of makes it kind of weird. But then the other thing that if they were to bring Super back that they need to explore, or at least it felt like they didn't spend enough time exploring, was the whole multiversal aspect. And for me, that's what I thought was kind of interesting. It's like, you have these angels, you have these gods of destructions, and then you have this guy who's like everyone's afraid of him, and he can basically decimate universes with no issue, like destroying them versus erasing them is like a total different ball game. Them versus erasing them. And then we didn't really get that. The only hint that we got that there was something even bigger was Jiren was talking about how his mentor got killed by somebody, and because of what they were, he couldn't bring back his mentor because I don't know if they were a demon or whatever, but they couldn't bring them back. And I guess that was the thing that I wish they kind of built on more, where it's like, if they have these angels and this other stuff, does that mean that there's like an opposite faction? Because what's the point of the gods of destruction? Because they seem to take their jobs pretty seriously, or there's certain rules that they seem to really abide by, or something like that. And we just don't really see anything more than that. Than I don't know, Vegeta having a binky, or I'm trying to think of some other thing, like a random future Trunks saga thing that didn't really, in a grand scheme of things, didn't really go anywhere. Because like, why did Zamasu go to a whole different alternate reality or different timeline to do his grand plan? You'd think he would do that in the main timeline that he's in already. I think that's the other issue too. Is like they had all these cool ideas, but then it's like they do almost everything but that. Because it's like, why did we need another future Trunks thing? Because like his story ended perfectly. Like it couldn't have ended any better than that, you know, first his timeline was shredded, then he goes back in the past, hopefully save everything, and then he ends up going back to his own timeline once everything's fixed in the main timeline, and then he basically ends his saga. The androids are done, Cell is done, and now his Earth can at least have some type of peaceful ending, somewhat, compared to what all happened.
Well, one of the things that you said earlier, Naveed, was like, for you, peak Dragon Ball was pretty much Saiyan Saga through Cell Saga, right?
Yes.
And so, like, I agree. Those are probably like some of the best sagas for me. Also, like, I love those. But that's like 4 or 5 years of TV right there. And so, like, if you're a Dragon Ball fan, and there's many of them around the world, how do you continue Dragon Ball? Do you said you wanted to stop watching after Boo, right? Like, you wanted it to be done. But then how do you keep making stuff in the Dragon Ball universe, and how do you make it feel fresh? You know, you have to change things up. You can't, like, if you just continually had a new, stronger person arrive on Earth and they fight that person and they wait for the next person to arrive on Earth, like, that would get really boring. So you have to switch things up, you know?
I know. I'm okay with that. I prefer they didn't do anything. I would have been okay if they would have ended it after that, like, completely. But I get it. If they have to bring the show back, they have to change it up. And Super did a good job. I thought Super did a. I know I give it a lot of trouble, but it's because I love Z so much. But Super did a great job. The thing is, with this new show, I feel like I haven't seen it. We don't know how it's going to end up, but it's just like, I feel like it's just going too much into the direction of Dragon Ball and not mixing it up like Z, like Super. Super mixed up Z and Dragon Ball, but it looks like it's going back to Dragon Ball, which is what I do not like. As a guy who loves Z like more than anything, I really don't want another, like, Dragon Ball was good. It was a good show, but I just don't want another version of Dragon Ball. It just because you already showed me the seriousness of Z. You know, you already showed me the mixture of both, and you're gonna just like take what I love about Z, and you're just gonna take it away completely. You know, as a fan who loves Z, that's just my opinion. If you love Dragon Ball, you probably would love this show. But I saw Dragon Ball Z as a kid growing up, because I used to watch it when I was 5. I saw it as like an adult show, an action-packed show, fighting. I was doing martial arts too. I liked that aspect of it, and Dragon Ball had that too. But Dragon Ball, it was more like, you know, adventure. You know, if you like that adventure style, then you'll love it. But I like the fighting, going against a powerful guy. You know, and it had Z had its adventures too, not as much as Dragon Ball, but, you know, they had certain things, you know, that they did too, and it had so much great characters. I think the characters in Z were a little bit better than Dragon Ball. Like, the Cell was a good idea. You know, Frieza was a great idea. You know, the Super Saiyan transformations were great. So many different things that they added I thought were awesome. But that's just my preference. You know, everyone has different opinions. I think
the difference too with Dragon Ball is it was like an adventure kung fu show. Dragon Ball Z is really, honestly, it's strayed a lot from its roots, and it did it in a good way, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But the original Dragon Ball, if you rewatch a lot of those battles, like with you know, King Piccolo and Tien Shinhan, and like all these different enemies that they encountered, like, Goku couldn't just throw a spirit bomb or do like or reach some crazy high level. Like, he had to fight like a human being most of the time. If you watch, like, he had the power pole. He used a lot of, like, you know, very, very good footwork and good punches and kicks. And he would try to outmaneuver his opponents a lot. And so that fighting style was a lot more like kung fu, like martial arts, like human martial arts. And so that action, it honestly was there were some battles in Dragon Ball that were like some of the coolest action I've ever seen in this series. It's just different. Dragon Ball Z, like, it's like epic, powerful. Like, you really like to see them charge up for 5 minutes at a time and reach this Super Saiyan form, and then, like, just knock them out with like a fully charged Kamehameha. Like, it's very epic, but it's not really like fighting. It's more like just like who can throw the biggest energy attack at that person, you know? And so what I like about going back to Dragon Ball is they're going to have, I'm sure of it, they're going to have really, you know, tightly choreographed fighting scenes with like actual footwork and different, like, different fighting strategies. and not just like, let's throw the biggest energy ball that we can at this person.
They don't. I disagree with that. If you look at the Vegeta Goku fight, that was probably that's like one of the best fights in all of Z. I mean, even Dragon Ball, that was very well for. Yeah, Saiyan Saga, that was good. I think they have better fights in Z than Dragon Ball. They're more choreographed in Z. Like for instance, you look at the Cell versus Gohan fight, that was very good. I think that's better than any Dragon Ball fight, was the Cell Gohan fight. And then you have the Goku Vegeta fight, both of them, the Majin one as well as the beginning of the Saiyan Saga. I think they're just as good, if not, I think they're better with the energy balls added to it. Makes it even better, in my opinion. Like the Goku versus Gallic Gun versus Kamehameha was the best thing ever, that I saw. I just feel like, yeah, you're right that they do more martial arts, I guess, than Dragon Ball, but I think the fighting was a lot better in Z. I mean, I think it's much more choreographed, like way better techniques, and they had like each person had their own special powers. Like it made it way better. I prefer Z. I just prefer Z. For me, nothing beats the Z. I think Z is just the flagship show of Dragon Ball. Like Dragon Ball, when it came to the United States, Z was the one that got it up, to that status. Because if Z wasn't successful, they probably wouldn't have had Dragon Ball on TV. They wouldn't have GT. But Z was so good that it helped bring those shows over. So it's just my opinion. I just think, for me, I know people prefer Dragon Ball, and I'm cool with that. But I just think Z is just better for me. Nothing can change my mind. I just think Z is just a better show for me, at least.
To build on what Phil was saying, so there was another anime I followed called Naruto, and then they had the sequel series Naruto Shippuden, which was basically just 2 years in the future or whatever. Well, anyways, that had an issue with what Dragon Ball Z had, where basically, towards the end, or at least Super did, where in the beginning, certain attacks were kind of like hard to pull off, or you can only do so many of them a day. Towards the end of the series, these people were like shooting these things off like machine guns. But there was one fight though that they had, and at least it's considered by at least a lot of fans to be the best one. At least for me, it's definitely the best one. It was between Kakashi and this character called Obito, and they had this awesome like hand-to-hand combat. And then when they did use those superpower moves, it was fairly sparingly. Like it wasn't like they were blowing up half a mountain on each throw of the punch. And most of it was just that hand-to-hand combat. And the fighting style was just so clean. The animation was so good, and it was so cool at the same time, because it's like the attacks kind of like went along with their punches and stuff like that. It wasn't like, oh, I'm just going to fire a million blasts at you. And it was awesome. But then like when you went to the main series, like because the funny part was that fight wasn't in the manga. It was just like this bonus thing in the anime, but it was so good. But then when you go to the main anime, and they're just doing this thing, they're just throwing all these crazy attacks or blowing up stuff, and it's just like, it's just like one of those things. It's like, because I guess it kind of goes back to that thing. You know how cool the show can be, and when it's just like all these like blasts flying at them, then it kind of, because in the anime, what became an issue was that they had this guy called Madara as the main bad guy, and his powers got to the point where it was so ridiculous. You're like, okay, now the heroes have to get some type of superpower, some power up, because there's no way they can contend with them as they are now. There's no way. And sure enough, like maybe like a couple chapters later, they get the power up, and so it just kind of ruined the whole like thing. Because towards the end, I'm just like, because I put so much time into this series, I was just like, I'm just there, like, it's like kind of like you just sitting there, you're just waiting for it to end. It's just like, this is where we're at now. It's like we went from here in the beginning with all this potential, then the end they just squander it all, and it was bad. And then I think with Dragon Ball, I think it's kind of like that too, only to a certain extent. Because when I think about the Daima thing, I think it kind of goes back to wasted potential, because I think about characters like that Devil Man who can burst someone up with if they have evil intent in their bodies. So more magical based attacks or stuff like that. And I think if they had stuff like that where these characters were able to scale up, or at least prove to be a threat where they didn't have to fire the biggest blast, I think that would have made, at least that could give this show potential. Because I guess the kind of like circle back, because I only know so much of their turn to kids. Do they lose a whole bunch of their power, so they get a whole like weaker?
Almost certainly they won't be able to use the same moves at the same level, I'm pretty sure. Because why else would they turn them into kids? Like, I think that's part of what Akira Toriyama wants to do. But to me, like, I love the fights in Dragon Ball Z, don't get me wrong. but like I could probably rewatch Dragon Ball more than I could rewatch Dragon Ball Z, in the sense that Dragon Ball has like a lot more strategy to the fights, and they, in some of those fights, they kept me on the edge of my seat and surprised me more than Dragon Ball Z. And the one that I would talk about there is when Goku battles King Piccolo. If you guys saw that, or if you remember it,
it's fantastic.
Yeah, that was a good fight. The hole in the
end
stomach.
of that fight, right? Like to summarize the end of that fight, like there was a lot of stuff before, but at the end, Goku was lying on the ground with broken legs and one broken arm, and he could only move his other arm. And King Piccolo was in the air, like getting ready to charge at him and finish him, and he could barely move a muscle in his body. And like what really, like, that was a memorable fight for me, because I had no idea how it was going to end, and I was so surprised the way that Goku, in a split second, decided to do a Kamehameha to like basically launch himself in the air and into Piccolo and just like go straight through him. Like, that was so surprising. And so like that's a very different type of fight, where the odds are stacked against you, and you can't just do one last charge and shoot out all your energy. You have to think of a strategy to defeat the person. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that with this limitation of them being kids and being less powerful.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about that thing though is like, if it followed like the same, it's just a random thing, but King Piccolo should not have died from that. He should have easily regenerated himself. Like, I if it was like, like Dragon Ball Z and stuff, but like, but like that was good. I enjoyed that. It was a really, I've seen that many times. Tien was down. I think it was like Goku broke all of his bones, and he used the Kamehameha on the ground with one arm, and then used the Dragon Fist.
That was the most tension. Yeah. The most tension I've felt in a Dragon Ball fight, probably out of all of them, because like it really looked like you really thought Goku and everyone would die in that moment. And then it was just spectacular how he beat King Piccolo. Like, that was amazing when I saw that.
I just like, I've seen Dragon Ball a couple of times. For me, because I've seen Z first, and Dragon Ball is a good show. If you're more of the adventure type guy, it makes complete sense. But if you're more like action, like you like action movies, you want to see the action, I would say Z just has way better action, in my opinion. Like, Dragon Ball has some good fights, but it's a little bit more playful fights. It's not serious like Z is. Like,
Dragon Ball Z is for people that appreciate the power aspect and like wanting to be the most powerful. Dragon Ball is for people that appreciate the martial arts aspect and the adventure aspect. They're just different things, Yeah,
I think the martial arts, I would say, for me, I think Z is just as good with the martial arts. I think it has more dynamic moves. I mean, for that I would split it, but I think Z is martial art wise better. But adventure wise, Dragon Ball blows it out of the water.
Well, I think I slow it down. I think because when you do think about the martial arts inside Dragon Ball or Dragon Ball Z, like a lot of their fights boil. Because how many times have you seen like two characters duking it out at one another, and they're doing that thing where their arms and legs are like blurs, and you just hear that like all that whooshing sound and stuff.
Right. Yeah.
And because then you never really get to see them throw a punch, because they're wanting to show how fast these guys are like going at it. But I think they need to realize that when they do show them fighting like that, it kind of gets boring, because you're not really seeing any real blows. But when they slow it down, when they do a blow, then it's like that's a little bit cooler. And
I
think if they focus more on that, then they can show how cool sort of some of the attacks can be. Kind of like where we all were just saying, because like when Goku would use his feet to use a Kamehameha, or then I'm trying to think of another one that was like creative, where when he fought Frieza, there was that one time where Frieza couldn't detect power levels, like sense them. And so Goku did that one thing where he had the Kamehameha, where he was able to do it to where it was just a ball.
And you just tricked him, just think that
came from above and kicked him in the head. And that was cool, because I was like, oh, we never seen the Kamehameha. Like, every time we ever seen the Kamehameha, it was always a beam. Never seen it in a ball in suspended animation almost. But it's just like Goku pretty much mastered the thing. I mean, he shot it off one try as a kid. I would imagine he would be getting pretty good on how to use the thing. And, that was a cool way that he used that power. And I think that was something that maybe I wish I saw more of inside this series. Like the closest thing I can think of off the top of my head was when Goku charged. Well, it was when he got the Ultra Instinct thing in Tournament of Power, and the Kefla. I think that was the fusion name, right? Kefla.
Yeah, Kefla.
Yeah, she was about to blast him, and I guess there was really no way to avoid it in a sense. And he was able to like run, and he used the Kamehameha like a charge state as like a almost like a skateboard to grind on the beam attack, and then right when he was at that right spot to hit her, then he just unleashes, and it was like, okay, that's kind of cool, because that's another thing where besides the ball thing, no one's ever kind of used it to kind of like, I guess, sort of deflect another blow like that, and that's a cool way of seeing it, and
yeah,
I think kind of like what y'all were saying, just like how we see this cool way that these powers are used. And it's memorable because we've always seen them used a certain way, but then when they were used in a way that was not the intended use that we've seen it all the time, it was just cool. It was just like, oh, well, that was like, it's just that. It's like using the Kamehameha like a rocket, like a rocket to launch yourself. I mean, that's awesome. Using it to grind on something like that, or use it to like distract someone like that, like with Frieza. It's like seeing that creative way of using that same old party trick is just made it more special. Oh, which reminds me, Naveed, when you're talking about Piccolo surviving like King Piccolo, I think to go on a more nerdy side, I think the more powerful the Namekian, I think the better their regeneration is, like what they can recover from. Because King Piccolo couldn't survive like a hole through the chest. Then you go to Saiyan Saga, but Piccolo gets hit with a blast and he's not obliterated, right? But he still dies. And then trying to think. Then fast forward, he gets shot through the chest by Frieza, and he's like, and he pretty much collapses, like he's pretty much on the brink of death. But the fast forward like to Buu Saga, he gets hit with Deborah's spit, and he turns to stone, and he actually shatters. And there's one point where Trunks asks him, like, well, how the hell did that happen?
His head was intact, yeah. Right? As long as his head's intact, he's fine.
But that's my point, is I think because I think the more powerful the Namekian, the better the regeneration or what it takes to kill them.
Yeah. Yeah, no, trust me. Like, when it comes to nerdy, like, Dragon Ball, I don't know too much. I watched Dragon Ball, and I'm, like, average on Dragon Ball. But Z, like, I know, I read the manga, I know every, like, single detail of Z, like almost like I even know which ones can't, like, the entire like Goku going to heaven or the other world is all filler, right? That doesn't exist. There's no Python. That was just, that's all. Yeah, that one. Yeah, the Snake Way. The first one where he's going to King Kai's place is that's real. Canon. But the one where he goes like after he dies from Cell, that one's not canon at all. So that's that, and the Garlic Jr. is not canon. There's a lot of non-canon in Z.
Garlic Jr. wasn't, but I wouldn't be surprised if they do make him canon. Because I mean, Broly wasn't canon originally, but he became canon, and I think they might do that with.
And another thing people don't know is like when Goku was fighting Kid Buu, right? Super Saiyan 3. I actually got into it Anthony with on this one. He was saying Super Saiyan 3 isn't powerful because he wasn't killing Kid Buu. Well, actually, Goku was holding back, so he gives Vegeta a chance to fight Kid Buu. So he wasn't even fighting his full Super Saiyan 3 power. He even admitted it in the manga and the anime. So he actually could have finished off Kid Buu early, but he was just holding back so Vegeta would have a chance.
Well, that was the same thing. The same thing happened with the kids too, like when it was Chunky Buu, like Fat Buu. Wasn't that too, where he could have killed Majin Buu, but he decided not to because he wanted the boys to take a crack at him.
I mean, it hasn't been stated in the manga or the anime, but I'm pretty sure he could have killed him. But it hasn't been stated. But
than Majin Buu.
He was. He probably could have. He could have probably ended it. But he was. You gotta understand that at that time he's running out of time because the more energy he uses for Super Saiyan 3, the less time he has on Earth. So he also had a time limit on him as well. So, the more energy he uses, he's gonna end up turning Super Saiyan 3.
Thing. Didn't time travel slower in the afterlife? That's why he was able to train up like he was able to.
They never really explain it, but I guess because his body was able to contain a lot more power because he was dead. So he was able to transform to Super Saiyan 3 and stuff a lot easier because his body was not really alive or something. It's his body pretty much. He didn't have a human body, or he didn't have a Saiyan body. He had like a immortal body, because he's dead, so that he was able to transform a lot more easier during that time.
One explanation that time traveled slower, passes by more slowly inside the afterlife than it does in the regular world.
I haven't heard that one, but it could be true.
But I know that's like he's able to get more training in than like Vegeta could have.
Yeah, I think it also has to do with the body he's in. His body's dead. I heard that in the anime that he was able to, because his body is like not alive anymore, so he's able to become stronger a lot faster. But yeah, there's a lot of things like secret things in C that I don't know, but like I tried to
Something that makes you wonder, why didn't like Kami or any other people tell like Goku and all of them back in the day, like when the Saiyans were coming? Why did they ever tell them, like, hey, we got this thing called a hyperbolic time chamber. It's fully locked, it's fully ready. Go train in there, because all the training you could have done, like, all in that time, you're not going to be able to do it. So
actually, yeah. Oh, sorry. They actually did go to the hyperbolic time. If you remember in the Saiyan saga, they did. I think it was Piccolo, Yamcha, not Piccolo, sorry, Krillin, Yamcha, and Chaozu and all those guys, they actually did go to the hyperbolic time chamber in the Saiyan saga, where they faced the old Saiyans. Do you remember that? They faced the old Saiyans from like thousands of years ago.
The hyperbolic time chamber, though.
That was technically the hyperbolic time chamber. It's really strict. Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Some type of image training.
No, I think they didn't explain it explicitly, but I have a feeling that was the time chamber. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I think that was like sort of like in the vicinity of it. I don't know what that is exactly, but that was like their training in Kami's tower. So I don't know if it's a time chamber. I'm just saying like it could be, but they did go and they trained against those old Saiyans and end up getting destroyed because they were a lot weaker. But that could be. I don't know what that is exactly, but it might be.
Was that in the manga or was that just the anime only?
It was in both. I think.
Pendulum room.
Yeah. That's it.
That's not the. Must be like some type of virtual reality training thing.
Yeah, I thought it was the same thing as the time chamber. I wasn't sure.
No, because it's like that was something that. I mean, the excuse would probably be made that none of them were going to be strong enough to handle the hyperbolic time chamber. That might be the only thing I can see that would kind of like defend why the characters never gave them, access to it. Because it'd be like, well, we didn't do that because you wouldn't survive, or something like that. We didn't think you would survive, or something like that. That'd probably be what would be the excuse. Like when they ask, like, why did you guys ever tell us about this?
Yeah, it could also be because they weren't Goku, Vegeta, Gohan, or Trunks. Like those guys had a chance of they would get stronger in a year. There's a good chance like Krillin, Tien, and Yamcha, they wouldn't get as strong if they were training in the time chamber with each other. Like, you know what I mean? They're not like powerful like a Saiyan,
Yeah.
And it's also like they just get an extra year, but that might not be enough for like people that are humans. That's just my thinking. If it was like Goku and Gohan, it would make more sense.
Yeah, but the only thing that kind of like detracts from that a bit is that I guess I look at Krillin, like, because Krillin was training with Goku early in Dragon Ball. And for the most part, for a long time, they were pretty on par with one another. And it started diverging around, I can't remember when. It was when Goku was a little bit older and he fought, Tien. That's where it really started to like kind of diverge between their powers. But I guess my point bringing that up is that Krillin at that time, they were training on a similar level, and then I'm looking at Super now as it is, or even DBZ. It was like Krillin's like the strongest human on the planet, and he's still able to do pretty amazing things. And there's a huge lag in power behind him and the Saiyans, but the humans are always getting powerful too. And I guess when I'm looking at Super, it's like, that reminds me of a good question. How powerful do you think Krillin is in like Super? Because I always think of it like, as far as the main cast, they can always beat the last villain pretty easily. Do you think like, okay, not Frieza Black, not Golden Frieza or Frieza Golden? Do you think that Krillin could have defeated old Frieza at 100% power at Super?
Yeah, I think so. I think at that time he's a lot stronger. Some people might even say he can beat Cell. Perfect Cell. I mean,
I think so too. I think almost all the DBZ cast, excluding Tien, could have beaten Cell at the Tournament of Power.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about max power Cell. I'm not. I'm like, when I say this, I'm saying it like at their max thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about that, because Saiyans, like, they've always been like 10x, 100x stronger than humans, and when they fight someone strong, they increase 10x more than a human would have increased from fighting that same person. Like, that's part of their genes, is that they just grow stronger more easily. And so I think, like with Frieza and with Cell, like, they were basically able to, like, destroy planets, right? Like, Frieza did destroy a planet. That was his strategy for killing Goku when he wasn't strong enough, was to destroy the planet. And do you think Krillin has that type of capability, that type of energy capacity as a human being? I don't think so. Like, unless he uses some strategy, like his Destructo Disc, which actually did, do damage to
Nappa, right? Nappa or Frieza, Nappa, yeah.
He was able to, like, catch Frieza off guard and cut him in half. But if you're talking about a 1-to-1 fight that really comes down to power, I don't think Krillin's power is the same as even Frieza in the Frieza arc of Dragon Ball Z.
I think so. I think, because, I mean, the way I look at it is, like, if a character can take a punch from another character that's, like, way more powerful, and we're just talking about blowing up planets, I mean, even back in the Dragon Ball days, Master Roshi was able to blow up the moon. And at that time, I think even his max power was at like 300 or something like that. So even Master Roshi was able to blow up a pretty sizable planetary body. And then with Krillin, it's like he's like I'm just talking about even at the end of DBZ, he was way more powerful than Master Roshi, because Master Roshi, at least as far as we knew at DBZ at that point, he didn't train. He was still at that weak state. But then fast forward to, like, obviously Super, they're all more powerful. But Krillin is, like, way more powerful too, because, I know Goku was holding back, but when he was sparring with Goku, that's pretty sizable, because Goku at base state can probably easily wipe the floor with, like, Kid Buu, Majin Buu, and all those other characters, because he got way more powerful after the Battle of the Gods. And Krillin was able to spar with him, and I know Goku was holding back. There's no way that if Goku went full at it, even at base state, Krillin wouldn't manage. But we're talking about these characters where, kind of like how Goku couldn't even touch Beerus, even at Super Saiyan 3. It's like, that's a big thing for base state Goku going against Krillin. And this is after training after Battle of the Gods. And I guess the way I look at it too is just that if Krillin can at least tag a base state Goku after Battle of the Gods, then that should kind of correlate with him, like, basically soloing almost all the old DBZ villains.
I mean, if you're going to use that reference point, maybe. But again, the challenge with that reference is that you don't know how hard Goku is actually fighting. It doesn't seem like he was actually fighting that hard. So you'd have to speculate on that part of it. But to me, what it seems like is, like, anyone who has any amount of Saiyan DNA is just inherently stronger than human beings by a lot, and they're going to progress a lot faster. And so, like, you look at Trunks when he came back and defeated Frieza, like, super easily, and that was supposed to be a stronger Frieza. They built him stronger than when Goku defeated him. Well, it's still because he's got that Saiyan capacity, and he's got that Saiyan energy. And if you look at their power as, like, drawing on their natural power and bringing it out, which is, like, the whole philosophy of chi, which this idea of, like, the ki that they use for energy attacks is based on this idea of chi from, like, Kung Fu. It's like, what if chi was actually some energy in your body you could bring out, not just like a fighting spirit or a fighting energy. And them being Saiyans means that they have more energy to bring out of their bodies than humans do. And so maybe Krillin could defeat Frieza, but defeating Cell, who's, like, he's been engineered to be stronger. I know Dragon Ball Super Krillin, maybe he could defeat Frieza, because we've already seen that he has a Destructo Disc that can cut him in half. But are you talking like Perfect Cell? You think he could beat Perfect Cell by himself?
Yeah, I think he can definitely. I mean, I'm talking about
look
Dragon
at
Ball
look at.
Super.
So I guess the question there is, does Krillin have the same energy capacity as Gohan when he annihilated Perfect Cell?
Looking at how strong
Does he have the same capacity as that? Because that's what he would need to like. Because remember, Perfect Cell, you have to destroy every cell in his body. So does Krillin have that type of energy output to destroy every cell in Cell's body?
He doesn't even have to. He just has to destroy the core. He doesn't have to destroy every cell because with Cell, the only reason why he survived was that his core survived, and because of that core surviving, he was able to regenerate. So if Krillin could do it both ways. He can blow up the whole body, every little cell there is, or just the core. He can do both.
Does Krillin? What energy attack does he have that could fully envelop Cell? Like what energy attack?
Or the Destructo Disc is one.
Well, he can do a command.
Well, that's a thin frisbee. That wouldn't destroy every cell in Cell's body.
Yeah, because like pretty much everyone on the DBZ.
How big of a Kamehameha? Is it even big enough to destroy Cell?
Oh yeah, it doesn't matter. Strong. It can. You can. Cause the thing about the Kamehameha is that you can make it as big or small as you want, and the thing is, like, either he can hit him in the core or he can just destroy the whole body. Now, that's just the Kamehameha thing. Now, if he wanted to, he can also do... It was, like, one that I think we only seen happen once, but it was over in the Saiyan Saga. It was when they had the Cyberman. And Krillin done this pretty cool attack where he shot this big blast in the air, and he was able to do this scatter shot, kind of like similar to Piccolo's Hell Grenade or something like that. And he could envelop Cell that way. But at this point, I'm just talking about, like, just the character's ability to fight. Because, like I said, I think... Because all the characters gotten way more powerful after the Buu Saga when the whole Super thing hits.
But what you guys are talking about is soloing, right? Yeah. And so Frieza, Cell, and Buu, none of those were solo fights. Maybe Frieza was the one that was most solo because, like, Goku at that point was the only one that could really go toe-to-toe with him. But, like, look at how many people and how much damage had to be done to Cell and Buu before Goku finished him off. And you're saying Krillin can 1v1 him from 100% health?
Oh, yeah, hell yeah. If we're talking about Frieza Saga, we're talking about Frieza Saga, Frieza. And, you know, with, like, Krillin at Dragon Ball Super, hell yeah, I think he could.
What's the... Past Dragon Ball Z, what's the biggest villain that Krillin defeated 1v1? I'm trying to remember. In Super, did he like in the Tournament of Power? Which people did he take out by himself?
I actually don't remember. Let me see.
Because I think that's what you have to compare it to, and you'd have to see was that person the equivalent of Frieza or Cell or Buu in Z.
Well, the best example I can think of is, I mean, if we have something that's a little bit more stated directly, we'd have to look at Master Roshi fighting that Birdman guy when he transformed, and there was one point where Master Roshi was saying that I guess the gimmick of that character was that when he's in that transformed state fighting, he becomes infinitely more powerful. Like, he exponentially is getting stronger and stronger. And Master Roshi basically says he has to use that super mega mega Kamehameha blast to, like, knock him out. Yeah. So, like, I think that would be a good instance to where to show that that's a character that could easily, where Master Roshi, because I still think Krillin was probably the strongest fighter outside of the cyborgs, you know, like the androids. I think he was still the strongest fighter on the DBZ cast. Well,
so you bring up the androids, and, like, I would agree with you to say that Android 17 is the guy, right? Feats. He could easily defeat any of the Dragon Ball Z supervillains because he's an android who never gets tired, and we've seen that he's been training since Z. He's been training as hard as he can since Z. And so he could defeat any of those Z villains. But I don't, it's still a hard sell for me to say Krillin could, unless I'm comparing him to someone in Tournament of Power that he defeated by himself that's the same level as them.
Well, because I'm kind of going off to the mini tournament where it was against Universe 7 and 8, where, you know, those characters were facing off against Hit, Winnie the Pooh the Bear guy, Robot Man, and then, like, knockoff Frieza. Like, those characters were, like, were super powerful to where they kind of gave Goku and the cast a little bit of trouble. And this kind of goes back again to where this is after post Battle of the Gods, where, you know, things were a lot more difficult as far as, like, the scale of it all.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I liked all the shows. I give Super a hard time because it came after Z, but yeah, it's just they're all good. They're all unique in their own way. It's just what you prefer, honestly.
Malcolm, going back to Krillin for a second. Here's the official list of who Krillin fought in Tournament of Power. So he defeated Shosa and Majora, and I don't even remember who they were. But it says he was eliminated by Frost. And so that's actually a good question. Is Frost is the Frieza from another universe, right?
Knockoff Frieza, yeah.
Knockoff Frieza, and he's probably not as strong as Golden Frieza, which therefore might mean that he's as strong as original Frieza. And Krillin was
No way he's
defeated.
strong as original Frieza.
You think he's stronger than original Frieza?
Hold on.
And this is
way he can defeat. There's no way Frost. Okay,
defeated
what
Krillin.
power scaling are you going off of here? Because
Frost defeated Krillin, and so how much stronger is Frieza than Frost? That's the question.
Okay, but that's the only issue when you're putting it like that is so there was a mini tournament between Universe 7 and 8, and the issue is that Frost was able to somewhat go toe to toe with like Goku at base state and even Super Saiyan, and this is a Goku after Battle of the Gods. The same Goku that had to go, who couldn't even touch Beerus at Super Saiyan level 3. And Beerus was barely barely screwing around. Even when Goku went Super Saiyan, hey, Miles.
Hey.
He can't hear us.
Oh, okay.
But anyways, yeah, okay, so we're talking about Goku that went against Frost, who, after Battle of the Gods, who Super Saiyan 3 state couldn't touch Beerus. And after training, getting Super Saiyan God, he got a little bit stronger to his base state. And then they were training with those new stats. And that was a character that was fighting with Frost. Maybe not, obviously not maximum power. But we're talking about a Goku who got amped up after Battle of the God, after Cell Saga, after Frieza Saga, after Battle of the God Saga, and all this other stuff. And Frost was a character that was fighting Goku at that time. And I guess my point is that I don't think Frost is definitely way above Frieza Saga. He's above Majin Buu Saga, like as far as even Kid Buu or whatever. But the issue is I don't think he was strong as Golden Frieza, because obviously Goku wasn't going at his maximum effort. He only did that with hit. But with Frost, he kind of only went a little bit above base state.
So this is a good argument that I've seen so far. Like, Krillin is stronger than Ginyu Force, but Ginyu Force were basically subjected by Frieza. Frieza ruled them, and I think you just have to show some comparable villain, and show that villain was defeated by Krillin, and that villain is the same level as Frieza in Z. And right now, I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing someone he's defeated in Super that's equivalent to Frieza in Z. Because Frieza in Z, he could just remember he was the ruler of the galaxy, right?
Yeah, but that didn't mean
he enslaved Saiyans to fight across the galaxy. So the question is basically, is Krillin the top fighter in the galaxy if you take away all of the other Z fighters?
That's not a good measurement though, because Frieza.
How not?
Because the reason why is that you had characters like Majin Buu, because Frieza acknowledged that his dad told him about a character called Majin Buu, and that he had to, that was a character that he shouldn't touch. And I guess my point is that I don't know. I mean, because then by that logic, then that would mean that I get what you're trying to say. Is that I guess what I'm trying to say is at least with my logic is that Krillin was able to fight in the Tournament of Power where a lot of those characters were incredibly strong. And I'm glad you brought up Frost, because Frost is a pretty good measuring pole in a sense. Because Frost fought Goku at base state, and even Vegeta at base state. And even Piccolo. He fought pretty much all three of them. And, Piccolo is immensely stronger than he was in Majin Buu arc. And he was fighting Frost.
Yeah.
And the point of me bringing that up is that if Krillin was able to fight with Frost, that puts him at a state where, not to say that he could have beaten Frost, but that puts him at a state where, you have this character that can fight basically these characters that were a lot stronger than when we saw them in Majin Buu or Battle of the Gods, then that means that that kind of gives you a state where, was he struggling? Was he having a hard time? Was it just a complete wash? And that's something that you can use, where if you can use a more powerful character that fought another one that may have been weaker, kind of like a whole measuring thing. It'd be like, I don't know, you have Mike Tyson fighting Arnold Schwarzenegger, who then fought, I don't know, Pee Wee Herman. If Pee Wee Herman held his own against, Mike Tyson, then it kind of gives you a good measuring pole on how he's going to do it against Arnold. And then that's the same kind of like aspect. You know how stupid strong Goku, Vegeta, and Piccolo are. So that gives you a good measuring pole on what may happen if this character fought one of the other cast. And not to say, there's no way in hell I thought Krillin was going to beat Frost. There's no way, because Frost was way more powerful. Like Krillin, like the only reason why Frost almost lost was because Roshi. This is like a different fight, but the only reason why like a character like Roshi almost won was because he used that Mafumba to kind of like seal Frost. That was the only way that someone like Krillin could possibly beat Frost without killing him, was doing some type of trickery or something of that sort. But that's how you can, outside of them beating a character one-on-one, you can kind of use how well they struggle or how well they do against another character who fought a more powerful one. And Frost fought Piccolo, Goku, and I think Vegeta. I really want to say he fought Vegeta as well. But Krillin, depending on how well he does against Frost, that kind of gives you a good measuring pole of how well he could do against a character that was able to at least somewhat stand his own against some of the most powerful characters in the show.
Yeah. I laughed earlier because I read this comment on this thread about how strong is Krillin. And the comment was, he's the second strongest warrior in the multiverse, surpassed only by Mr. Satan. No. So you can tell that person doesn't think either of them are actually that strong. But the other thing I've seen in this thread that I think has a lot of merit to it is that basically, like, the argument is that Krillin is potentially at Super Saiyan level. And the reason why I think that's good merit is because if you look at like Dragon Ball Z, as soon as the Saiyans reached Super Saiyan level, they just surpassed all of the humans, like by like 100-fold, right? Like you would never see a human be like the closer in any of these main supervillain fights. Like they didn't close anything from that point on, right? Like they were openers, they could support, but they weren't doing anything really with Frieza or Cell or Boo or anything like that. And if you look at what Super Saiyan is, like we could look up the definition of it, but it's like increasing your power level like 10 times or 100 times or something crazy like that, right? And so like Krillin is essentially has no forms, right? He has no amplification of his base power level as far as I can see in the series. And if so, he's always fighting at his base power level, and Frieza can already amplify his power level through like 4 forms. That's already a bit of a stretch in my mind. Like, how good is his base power level is what it comes down to.
That's the issue with the whole the form stuff, though, because everything in Dragon Ball can get stronger. Like, the base form obviously gets stronger. The Super Saiyan forms get stronger, too. And the reason why I say the Super Saiyan forms as well is because I'm looking at the Cell Saga, where basically
Super Saiyan 1, is that stronger from Dragon Ball Z versus Dragon Ball Super? I don't think so. I think he just has better techniques.
Because remember that one thing where they're saying they were going to make it better by basically amplifying it? And when technically...
Like, you can do Kaioken on top of a Super Saiyan. We've seen that.
When they optimized it, where they tried being Super Saiyan like 24/7.
I guess I see what you're saying. Like, you can make it more efficient, but does that mean it's stronger? I don't know if that's the same thing.
That's the issue, though, because then what I'm trying to say is that because the state itself is just an amplifier. That's all it is.
Right.
But those people are trying to say that, oh yeah, he's Super Saiyan state now. But it's like, okay, Super Saiyan at what time? Because I can make a little mouse Super Saiyan somehow. And the mouse is still a mouse. It's just 10 times stronger now, or 50 times stronger. It's still a mouse. But if I give it to like an elephant or something, yeah, that elephant's going to be way stronger. But, I mean, because when they say Super Saiyan, okay, like Super Saiyan at what stage? Are we talking about like Goku as a kid, Goku during Frieza? Are we talking about Goku during the Super Saga? So using the Super Saiyan, like, Krillin is as strong as a Super Saiyan. Well, that's not a good measurement because those Super Saiyan states were used on characters at, throughout the series, but their base state was at different power levels.
Well, I think what you're talking about comes down to controlling Super Saiyan, because like when Goku first learns Super Saiyan, and when a lot of the younger Saiyans learn it, like they lose it pretty quickly because they don't know how to control it, right? And so maybe with them learning how to control it, they're able to unlock the power more. But Krillin, at the end of the day, he has no amplification power at all. He just has base power, and he has some good moves. Don't get me wrong, but if he's going up against people that can amplify their power, it just seems like his base power level would have to be really, really high.
Yeah, and that's why
to be able to beat them. And I don't know if it's that high.
I think his base power got a lot higher after. I mean, the reason why I say Super, my main issue with Super was how the power scaling went all off the charts. I was just gonna say because the power scaling got all off the charts because, we had characters that were basically sidelined. Since Frieza Saga, all the other Z casts got sidelined in I guess in favor of the Super Saiyan stuff. Because you had Vegeta, you had Krillin, you had Gohan, then you had Trunks, and then Piccolo had a little bit of sparing stuff in there, but that was about it. And then Blue Saga, all it was just Super Saiyan galore. None of the other Z fighters got a chance really. And then moved the Super, then they had to make an excuse to these Z fighters being somewhat contenders at all these other fighters or against all these other fighters. Then it's like now they had to make an excuse to make them all scale up, get more powerful. And then that's where Krillin had a chance to power up a whole bunch. And they even had Master Roshi power up a whole bunch. Because, kind of like going back, he was able to hold his own against Frost a little bit. Was he going to ever win? Oh, hell no. I mean, without the Mafumba thing, he wasn't going to win. But he was able to hold his own against Frost. And I think, as a character, Frost is a good measuring pole to compare, because he fought against Krillin and Master Roshi. And then and then using how strong Frost was in that mini saga, that mini tournament, then that kind of gives you an idea like how powerful the other Z fighters got.
Yeah, you do have really good points. I think one of the big things that I'd have to get around to see Krillin as like able to defeat Frieza is that, as far as I've seen in Dragon Ball, there's really only two ways you can increase your power level. It's either you train a long time or you reach some new state, right? And so, like, if you...
Okay, look at the androids. Because the androids... I mean, because it's like one of those things, I don't agree with it, but this is Toriyama what he wanted. So kind of even using the most recent superhero movie, the guy I think is the grandson of Dr. Gero, or is he like he's a relation of Dr. Gero. But androids or cyborgs that are stronger or damn near stronger than, like, I guess what I'm trying to say is you could have thrown them in the tournament of power and they would have done really good. And these were things that were just made within a short amount of time. And then power scaling, it's like it doesn't like but Gohan's a good example.
It's also like 30 years later, technology has advanced, and he could be a smarter scientist than his grandfather was.
That's a good point. I guess to me, the way I always look at it too, I guess it's Super really threw things for a loop. And what I mean by that, it's just it really threw scaling for a loop. And it started with Frieza, where he's like, well, I was born this strong, and if I train for 9 months, I'm going to be able to be really strong. And then it went from, because they had to like make an excuse to where Frieza Saga, who meant nothing at the end of Battle of the Gods and stuff like that. He meant nothing at the end of Battle of the Gods. He meant nothing at the end of Majin Buu. Then they had to make an excuse that after all these years he could train up for 9 months and then he can do all this.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing that's, I think, discredits Krillin to some extent, is that there are people in the Dragon Ball universe that their genetics allow them to become stronger than other people through training. And humans, if we're equating Dragon Ball humans to our humans, Like they have no special gifts to train and then get stronger than other species. Like the amount of work they put into training equals the amount of improvement they get out. But with Saiyans and Frieza, that's not true. It's like you put in the same amount of training as a human and you get 10 times out of it, basically, from what we're seeing. And at the end of Z, imagine Krillin's power level at the end of Z. It's like nowhere near Frieza, right? Like you would need like 100 Krillins to defeat Frieza if you're just doing power levels, something like that. And then at the end of Z, Krillin stopped training. Like from Super, he's like never trained. He's a police officer with like long hair. Like he's just enjoying his life, which is cool. But then you're saying within that like 9 months or however long they trained for the Tournament of Power, he has increased his level from Dragon Ball Z time to Frieza level Dragon Ball Z, is what we're basically saying. And there's no amplifier that he has. And he didn't go to the hyperbolic time chamber. So, like, how did he increase that much in that short of a time as well?
I don't agree with it. I'm just saying at how they present the characters in Super. That's the issue. Like, I like Super to a certain extent because it's like, it's more Dragon Ball, but that's the issue with the power scaling because they had to give all these characters an excuse to be able to come close to fighting some of these other characters. And logically I get what you're saying. It doesn't make sense, but it was Toriyama's choice, so it's like that's what we have to run with. Because I mean, the best example would even be Master Roshi. Like Master Roshi's the biggest BSer. I mean, Krillin
wasn't he training? Wasn't he training since Z? Like doing it maybe not as hard, but he still did some type of training, didn't he?
No, he wasn't. Like the only thing that we have about Master Roshi training was a throwaway line when so I don't know if you remember it, but there was at one point where Goku went to that one place where he was going to recruit Tien Shion. And there was some chick that was under his tutelage where she went evil or she had this other plan. And
I remember that.
And she threw a sticker seal thing on Master Roshi, and he became like really strong, or he was unleashing himself. And, Goku was caught off guard.
Well, that's valid because look at the Namek saga, like the Grand Namekian unleashed the inner power of many fighters, and that's a proven way to. That's basically a new state.
I think she was just controlling him. I think that was the thing. I don't think it was an unleashed thing. I think it was just a control thing. I don't think it was Grand Elder Kai level because from what I remember, she just threw a spell on him that she can control him. It wasn't like Grand Elder Kai or.
Well, look at Majin Vegeta. That's how he increased his power, also by a spell. So that's a proven way in the universe.
That's a good point. But I guess with Master Roshi, that was a big thing because, like I said, going based on like the last power level, which was 300 back in Dragon Ball, the very beginning of Dragon Ball Z, and assuming because we didn't have any evidence of him training all the way to the end of Z, but the only thing we had in Dragon Ball Super was a throwaway line where Goku says something like, "Oh man, Master Roshi must have been getting some secret training in," and it's like, I wasn't watching the Funimation dub. I was listening, like I was watching the original Japanese dub because I don't like watching the English dub because they changed some lines, and I guess that's the only thing we have for Master Roshi, and that's a bigger like power gap versus Krillin. Yeah, because we go from because Krillin, let's just say he was 100. Let's just say he was 500,000 at the end of Z. Mm-hmm. And that's why I also hate that they introduced that numbers too. Mm-hmm. But going from like 300 to 500,000, that's a big thing. And then then going from that to Super, where they're contending with these characters that fought with, I guess God Ki Goku and God Ki Vegeta, it just really throws it off. And Super really threw off the scaling. And I don't agree with how fast they scaled. Because if we wanted to be more natural, then it should have been a thing that no matter what, we always saw these characters training in the background or something. And let's just say even if they get a pot shot off that kind of knocks the villain over, not over, like hurts them, but kind of like they're like, whoa, what the hell is that? Then I think that might have made things a little bit more legitimate as far as really going at it in Super. But because that never happened and they had to have an excuse for all these characters to fight in this multiversal tournament, that's where things get a little hairy, and Super really messed with that scaling.
Yeah. The one argument I could see to justify Krillin being as strong as DBZ Frieza now is like removing his inhibitions and his own self-doubt. Because if you look at Goku, he's pretty much the only character that's never had self-doubt, and he's always fought as hard as he possibly can, right? Vegeta has been close to that, but he had like his own pride and ego and doubt about his abilities during the Frieza saga when he saw Goku surpassing him, and then he overcame that in the Cell saga and Majin Buu saga, and he just fought because he wanted to be stronger, and that increased his power. And Gohan, his saga, from the Frieza arc, like he felt powerless, he felt weak, and then he overcame that in the Cell saga, and he realized that there's nothing, like Goku said, there's nothing wrong with you. If you just see that, you'll see your true power. And Piccolo, like, you have everything you need inside of you. You just have to bring it out. And so, like, other characters have overcome their own fears and doubts and become a lot stronger from that. And Krillin, right, like, the only real thing that I've seen him do pre-tournament of power that would increase his abilities that much was when he did that image training with Master Roshi and Goku, and he did have to, like, fight Frieza and Cell and all of those DBZ people by himself. And even though they were just images, like, he fought full out with them. And if you look back at the DBZ Frieza fight when Frieza killed Krillin was pretty scared and, like, worried the whole time, and he never fought really as well as he probably could have. So if the argument is Krillin could now defeat Frieza because, yeah, he's done some more training, but now he's just a more mentally focused and competent fighter fighting at his full abilities, then maybe I could see that, yeah.
That was what I was going to use. I mean, I put the clip in the chat, but that's what I was going to go off of. And it's, like I said, I wanted to be, because it's like one of those things, like, logically, like, I would totally agree with you on a lot of this stuff where, we never seen him train and all this, but because of how Super handled that was my issue with just, it's like, this is what we have. It's like, we gotta, like, it's kind of like it may not be the best way in how we reach the final stage, but that's where we're at with what they gave us, and that's the only issue that I have. And I'm hoping that, I guess I'm just hoping that they kind of like when you're saying that with them resetting the clock in a sense for Daima, I hope that kind of balances out where they can give it more breathing room to where these characters can be at similar levels, and that it won't ever happen again where the power gap is so wide that the other Z fighters or characters are just like nothing, like they don't even matter. Because that was something I hated, because they have such a rich cast, and then they don't utilize them all, and it's like, they have such cool powers.
That's one of the things that made Dragon Ball, like, a lot more fun for me to watch than Dragon Ball Z. I feel like with Dragon Ball Z, it's pretty much like the Goku show, and, like, maybe the Vegeta show, and then everyone else is just there to, like, open the fight and get a few punches. And, like, be on the sidelines and be like, yeah, go Goku, go Vegeta, make sure you dodge his energy attack. But, like, they're just, like, supporting members, right? For pretty much all of Dragon Ball Z, except for, like, the core 4 fighters, like Goku, Vegeta, Gohan, Trunks. Like, those are the only people that really did anything in most of the important fights in Dragon Ball Z. But in Dragon Ball, I felt like pretty much until the end of Dragon Ball, every fighter had a role to play, and they had epic fights, and Goku actually didn't take out a lot of the big people and didn't land the biggest hits on a lot of the people, but he was just the guy that was able to hold on the longest and finish the fight a lot of the time. And that's what made Dragon Ball interesting, is like every fighter felt more balanced, It's not like the Goku show. It was like the cast around Goku was still just as fun and strong and good to watch.
I think that's why I made early Z pretty entertaining, because, like looking at Raditz versus, Goku and Piccolo, those two had a tag team to basically just take down one guy. And fast forward to Vegeta and Nappa and with all the Cybermen, pretty much the whole DBZ cast was in the fray. Hell, even at the very end with Vegeta, even Yajirobe came into play and chopped off the tail.
Right,
totally surprise, and it's just like, whoa, it's like, I didn't remember Yajirobe being in this fight, but he was in the fight, and that was like, and pretty much everyone was involved, well, except Master Roshi, but yeah, that's when he started being sidelined. But then fast forward to, like, even the Frieza saga, where that felt a little bit more hectic because you only had Krillin and Gohan, and those were really the only fighters on the planet at the time that were trying to go against all these crazy strong fighters, and they were basically trying to hide and get the Dragon Balls to make the wish, and then get the hell out of there, and then it became a whole bigger thing.
Yeah.
Android Saga, then it's like, then all the DBZ characters started taking the sidelines. And hopefully with the Daima thing, hopefully everyone gets a chance to at least do something, because...
Well, it gives them, like, an ability to do something, because now it's, like, in Super especially, like, when you've got, like, god-level powers and galactic powers, like, what can Bulma do? What can Tien Shinhan do? What can Master Roshi do? But, like, in Dragon Ball, like, a lot of the ways that they got out of those situations was by working together. And, like, Bulma would have some great invention or contraption they could use. And Tien Shinhan could fight just as well as Goku. And they could tag... You really felt they were tag teaming when they were taking on some characters. And all of these different people, like, they worked together. It was more interesting that way. Not just like, well, Goku's the strongest in the universe, we're just going to cheer him from the sideline,
That's what I'm hoping the new Daima is going to be like. But that's going to segue to my next thing. Have you ever seen Yu Yu Hakusho?
I remember seeing that. Yeah.
Have you ever watched the entire thing?
No, I haven't seen too much of it, no.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, the reason why I'm bringing it up is because I think some of the stuff that you're talking about now that you want to see in Z, or even Super, whatever, Dragon Ball, I'm just going to say Dragon Ball as a whole. What you're wanting to see in Dragon Ball, and I'm not talking about the old series, I'm just as a whole, Yu Yu Hakusho, I think, does a really good job of at least giving a lot of the characters their own chance. And not to say that doesn't happen, like, towards the end it kind of does what DBZ, or it kind of does the same thing as DBZ, where there's a little bit more of that gap issue. But for a good part of it, it was, a lot of the characters got a time to shine. And, and it felt like that early Dragon Ball, where these characters were getting stronger, but it wasn't too ridiculous to a certain extent. But they were having these adventures, the characters had stuff to play. And there was even one thing where, even after when they had a big bad tournament, they had this one thing where these characters' lives were on the line. Even though the characters, because of the magic aspect of it, even though the characters they were facing weren't like the most powerful badasses on the planet, they still had their lives were on the line because of the magical aspect of it, because of the spirit world and everything like that. So that's why I was bringing up Yu Yu Hakusho, because I think that's something that may scratch that itch if you're one that anime with those type of dynamics, or would it be stakes? Yeah, stakes. Kind of like medium rare. So I think that would kind of give you. I think Yu Yu Hakusho might fit that itch that maybe. I guess that Z didn't.
That's
feel
cool.
Kind of and Super, because, and plus it's a fun show. It's really fun.
Yeah.
I think you'd like it. I mean, if you like, I don't know how much anime you watch, but I think you'd like it. It's a little bit older, but is it older? No, it's not older than Dragon Ball. I don't think so, at least.
That sounds cool. Yeah, I might check it out. Thanks for the recommendation.
Yeah, no problem. But I just hope that... I just really hope that Daima gives the whole cast a chance to, shine. If they pull any of that nonsense with Dragon Ball Z, or... Super kind of done a little bit better. But if they pull any nonsense like DBZ did, where none of those characters got a time to shine, I'm not going to be liking it, because it's just such a rich cast, and it's just it just sucks they're not used.
I agree. It just feels like a shame to introduce these characters, build them all up, and then put them on the sideline,
Well, yeah. I don't know. It'd be okay, this is a good example. Let's say you have this amazing album, right? This the best album in the world, and then you only listen to the same song on repeat, the same one song on repeat all the time. You're like, what about all these other ones? You got all these other ones in the background. Why not this? Why are we on repeat on this one song? Not to say it's not bad or doesn't deserve maybe one or two repeats, but why all the time?
Yeah. Miles, are you there? What do you think about Dragon Ball? What are your favorite?
I haven't watched Dragon Ball in years.
Really?
Yeah.
Which one did you last watch? Was it Z?
It was the Frieza saga, the very beginning.
Frieza saga. Are you aware that there was a show before Dragon Ball Z called Dragon Ball?
No, I had no idea.
Okay, so that's what we've been talking about for like the last 5 hours, basically.
Okay.
Is like they're very different in tone. Okay, so like the high level overview, Dragon Ball Z, you know what it's like. It's all about power. It's all about strength. It's all about reaching the next crazy level and crazy epic fights, right? But Dragon Ball Z is pretty much like, okay, there's the next big bad guy, let's go fight him. Like there's nothing really in between the big bad guys as far as plot goes. If it is, it's like filler episodes. But Dragon Ball, the original series is very different. It's basically Goku is a kid for pretty much all of it. And he starts out like just being this kid raised by a grandpa in the woods. He has no friends. And over the course of like 8 or 9 seasons, he like travels the world. He meets all these crazy friends. They go on wild adventures. He doesn't have Super Saiyan, so he can't just like blast people away. Like he really has to fight and learn martial arts techniques from different mentors and different people he fights with. And so like it's much more of an adventure. Like the places that you see in Dragon Ball, it's so much more varied, and there's so many different people and different techniques that they use and different strategies they have to use to defeat these people. And it's basically an adventure comedy. It's honestly like not really the same tone as Dragon Ball Z. Like you don't really feel. I'll put it this way: in Dragon Ball, yes, you know that these enemies are like super strong, but you don't really feel like the world is at risk. It's a lot more like it's a serious, deadly fight between Goku and this person, and they're both using crazy martial arts, and they're just really well choreographed battles. And then in between that, they go on adventures and they have some funny stuff and whatnot. Dragon Ball Z, it's more personal and character development in the sense that like they're going on adventures and learning from each other. Dragon Ball Z, it's like the world is always about to blow up. There's always some big next terrible person you have to fight.
Yeah, it's always like life or death, pretty much.
It's always life or death, and that helps for the tone of like this is serious. You need to be a super big buff guy in this world. You need to reach the next level.
Mm-hmm.
But for me and a lot of other things we were talking about, like Dragon Ball Z, you wanted it to end at a certain point because you don't want him to just always face the next big bad guy. But Dragon Ball, the original series, when I got to the end of Dragon Ball, I felt I wanted more. I could have watched more of that. When I got to the end of Dragon Ball Z, when they fought Boo, I was kind of like, yeah, well, who else could they fight at this point? It's already just stronger person. So the difference is like, now that there's a new show in the Dragon Ball series called Dragon Ball Daima, and they're going back to the Dragon Ball style, it looks like, because they're taking Dragon Ball Super characters, which are adults, and they're turning them back into kids. And they're using there's the same fighting techniques and the same like fighting style and probably storytelling as Dragon Ball. That's made a lot of people in the Dragon Ball fan base very upset because they wanted to continue with like, no, I want to see Goku go past God level and fight more stronger people in the universe to fight. And they're doing a 180 and they're saying, no, we're going to go back to Dragon Ball now. And we're going to have probably reset Goku's power level to where he actually has to like learn new techniques and level up, and he can't just blow someone away. Yeah. And a lot of people are upset about that. But what I'm saying, why I'm excited about that, is because that type of storytelling, I really enjoyed it, and it was really fresh. And I feel that the path that they've been going down from Z of just find the next strongest person in the solar system, galaxy, universe, multiverse, like where do you go from there? I think they need to take a little break and kind of reintroduce,
like
revamp, or just kind of like reset expectations a little bit. Because part of what made Z so good is that it came after Dragon Ball.
Okay.
And if you see that transition, it's going back to its roots. And why is that a bad thing? And that's the question I have. Right?
I don't think so.
I would highly recommend you watch Dragon Ball, actually, Miles. If you're interested in Dragon Ball the series, I would recommend you watch Dragon Ball and then Dragon Ball. and you'll probably like them both. If you watch all of Dragon Ball, I think you'll like it. If you watch all of Dragon Ball Z, I think you'll like it. They're just different things, but they're both good in different ways, you know?
Yeah, like I said, it's been like since Tsunami days since I watched it. And then there was like, what is it? Like God, like Super Saiyan God or whatever, all that.
That's more recent.
That's the recent stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the last 5 years, I think. Yeah, that was like 5 years ago. Yeah, it's kind of because now they introduce this thing where there's multiverses, like there's other universes, and they introduce these gods and angels and stuff like that. So there might be like an opposing thing of demons and things like of that sort. But now that they're gonna have them turn into like pretty much the whole cast, like the main cast is gonna be turning into kids. I don't know, like I think the premise. I'm not sure all the ideas that are going into it, but a lot of people have been blasted because there was this one series called Dragon Ball GT where something similar happened where Goku got turned into a kid. So then he's traveling to these different planets with his granddaughter and teen Trunks, and they're basically instead of them traveling the globe to get the Dragon Balls, they're traveling to different planets to get the Dragon Balls. And so that was Dragon Ball GT. So a lot of people aren't liking it too, or at least blasting it because they feel like it's just like, oh, this is like GT.20 or something like that, or 2.0. And that's where some people are getting a lot of resistance with this newest one. But I'll tell you this, the animation looks fantastic, and I'm not sure what they're going to do with it. But if it's like, my biggest thing is I want the cast, at least everyone in the cast, to kind of like get a little bit of a chance to shine. Because if they do like how Dragon Ball Z ended, where it was just like the Super Saiyan 24/7, then I'm not gonna be like cool with that.
Yeah, that's a question for Anthony now that he's back. One point we were talking about, man, is that pretty much post Dragon Ball Z, it's pretty much been the Goku and Vegeta show. And so one of the good things about Dragon Ball when I watched that show, and why I felt like at the end of Dragon Ball I could keep watching it, is because all of the characters were pretty well balanced, and they fought together and they battled together and won together. And I felt more attached to all of those characters for that reason. But at the end of Z and Super, I was really only interested in the main four still, which is Goku, Vegeta, Gohan, Trunks. Like as far as like who made the biggest impact and fought the actual villains that mattered. It was only those four people at the end of the day. Right. And so what could be really cool about Dragon Ball is you could start to get familiar with those other characters again, and they could get cool arcs, and it would be fun to watch all of them again, I think.
Right. I agree with you there, because it is a Vegeta and Goku show. That's it. Like, no one else is really relevant.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, you're just down to two characters to carry the show. So when you go to Dragon Ball or to even this new series, everyone's going to play a key part. You know, from Yamcha to Tien to Goku, Vegeta to even probably Bulma and Chi-Chi to even Hercule. Like, everyone's going to have a key part in it because they're all children, you know? So that's what made Dragon Ball, or even like, you know, part of early Dragon Ball Z interesting, because everyone contributed until you got to the Saiyan arcs or like Cell games, where it's like, yeah, you pretty much have to be a Super Saiyan 2 to 3 to keep up in the show. If not, you're kind of just a background character.
Yeah.
You know?
And for me, the Dragon Ball cast has been really fun to watch. And so I like that potentially they're taking those people out of the sidelines, because like, why would you create all of these great characters just to put them on the sideline? I think this is a good thing that they're trying to bring them more into the fold.
I think it's just like just anything. It's like even life, like you either progress or you don't. But at the same time, it's just an anime where you can't really, you know, dig too deep, because it's like you're talking about like a race of Saiyans, or monkeys, or gorillas that have evolved to a point where they're going to the domain of the gods. Like, humans will never be able to enter the domain of the gods, but you know, these fictional characters, they can enter that realm.
Well, I think it didn't help too when you were talking about. Well, I think I'm thinking of it even on the simpler terms of just popularity, where it's like when the whole Super Saiyan Goku got added, that was like, like that was like the way that he transformed was like amazing. Where he just kind of like he was like he had the lightning strikes and stuff, and then he turned Super Saiyan. And he goes toe to toe with Frieza, and then it's like no other character. Now when I think about it, it's like no other like outside of Piccolo really getting a transformation. We didn't really get a big outside of the hero cast.
The only thing they'd be able to get is Kaioken.
That'd have been cool.
That's the only thing they could get because it's a technique. It's not a transformation.
Right.
That'd been cool to see them pull out Kaioken.
There's fictional manga that the fans have created where Tien, Yamcha, Chaozu, Krillin, they've learned the art of Kaioken because it's a multiplier.
Yeah.
And they're able to keep up with some major villains, or to get to, or even get to their power level at certain stages in the series.
Well, that was a question we had earlier, is could Krillin currently defeat any of the major villains from DBZ? And my point there was he doesn't have damage multipliers or states he can reach. So that would be one challenge.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So, in the episode of Super, when Goku and Krillin were going against
the image training?
Yeah, the image training, and they ran into Cell and Frieza. Supposedly, I gotta look up where I read this source. Supposedly, Krillin could take on Namek Frieza.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that was the only point that I thought could justify it, because you've seen a lot of characters progress to a really high level by kind of removing their own self-doubt and really removing their own mental blocks and limitations. Gohan only defeated Cell because of that, right?
Here's one.
Yep.
You can go buy off the manga or the anime, Master Roshi in the Tournament of Power.
I guess you cut out.
Uh-oh.
Master Roshi in the Tournament of Power.
Well, yeah, because you have Master Roshi somewhat standing his own against Jiren in the manga, and then you have Master Roshi somewhat holding his own against Frost, and then that Birdman guy.
Yeah.
Frost was fighting Goku and Vegeta and Piccolo, and this was post Battle of the Gods. Well, even Battle of F.
And look at what Master Roshi did before the Tournament of Power. He removed the distractions he's always had with just being totally googly eyes over girls. And the point there is that if he really committed himself to fighting with 100% focus, then maybe he could reach a higher level. Just like if Krillin removed his fears 100%, maybe he could reach a higher level. Because Goku has always been 100% focused. He's never had any doubts about himself. And that's part of why he's excelled so fast. And Vegeta, when he finally let go and started to just focus on being as strong as he could be after the Cell arc, he reached crazy levels as well and has gone crazy from there. So I could see that being a case where Krillin did the image training with Frieza and Cell and all of them, and he, for once and for all, defeated his fears and said, I'm just going to go ham. And then I could see him being at that level of the DBZ top fighter level.
To kind of add credibility to what you're saying, it's kind of like where Frieza, when he got killed after Resurrection F, he was in that cocoon, and he said all he had was time to image train or focus or hone himself. And so he became a lot, when he got released from that cocoon, he was way more powerful than he was in Resurrection F. So that's something that can kind of lend credibility to the whole thing of these characters where they train within themselves and they become way more powerful.
And you know what's funny? I will actually agree with image training because I did that for 9 months. And I came back better than ever with my, what. And I didn't, the mind is very powerful. People always say
100%.
It is very cliche and very cheesy, but if you can remove all distractions and really put yourself in a visual situation where you can foresee yourself in movements or doing something, it can actually happen. It's the weirdest, most surreal thing I've ever experienced. Because you're like, imagine yourself like, at a skill, whatever it is. But for 9 months, you can, imagine yourself perfecting or honing your skill. And then all of a sudden 9 months go by and you finally attempt your skill and somehow you're better.
Yeah.
That's it. It's surreal. It's a very surreal feeling, and it's hard to put into words and explain to people. Like, yeah, I didn't practice my skill for 9 months, but for 9 months I visualized myself training and I became better. And people are like, how's that possible? I'm like, you know what? You just have to do it, and you have to do it yourself to be able to comprehend what I experienced. Because it's like me saying, like, hey, you can visualize yourself for 9 months not going to the gym and you're going to be stronger. Well, that doesn't make sense on paper, but depending on the skill, somehow it works. It just depends on what it is.
Right. Well, because it's removing things that are limiting your effectiveness. If you're 100% focused, you're not going to doubt yourself. You're not going to worry. You're just going to use 100% of your potential. And so just by using more of your potential, you will be stronger. You will be better at what it is that you're doing. Like, there's a quote that says, like, we use like 5% of our potential every day, or like 5% of our energy every day. And that's true. Like, what if you were to wake up for like 12 hours and just go as hard as you could at whatever you're doing, whether that's weightlifting or playing a sport or, training for a new job or studying some new language. Like that 12 hours, you would progress more than 2 weeks of just doing it willy-nilly,
Right.